We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Here's what they don't want you to know. Baby, you want baby? I know that. I was born ready. Canelo Alvarez, he's given his stamp of approval and endorses Haymon and PBC. Yes, premier boxing champions. He goes on to say, basically, you know, he did some cool things with Golden Boy, but he believes that his career would be even further along had he stuck with Haymon and PBC. Dang. Shout out to Gilly and Wallow. They had Canelo as a special guest as he promotes his upcoming fight this September, Mexican Independence Day weekend. It's going to clash with the UFC Noche at the Vegas Sphere. That's where the UFC event is. Canelo is also fighting on MGM property. They're billing it as Mexico versus Puerto Rico, and we'll see how it plays out. But he's doing his promotional run, and keep that in the back of your mind. I want you guys to hear this first, and then I'll give my thoughts. Without further ado, roll the clip.
You chose Oscar over PBC, you went with Oscar. Do you think if you when you chose Oscar over PBC, you went with Oscar? Do you think if you would have chose PBC?
I think I would do better with PBC.
Oh!
I do good things.
He said, I think I would have done better with PBC, way better, if he would have stuck with PBC instead of Oscar.
You chose Oscar over PBC, you went with Oscar. Do you think if you would have chose PBC?
I think I would do better with PBC, way better. I do good things with Golden Boy, and I'm not mad with that, but I think we'll be better with PBC.
Is that the reason why you came over to PBC now?
Yeah, I like to work with everybody, but right now I'm working with PBC, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to work with them.
Yeah, because I know
I'm glad to do business with Haymon. And
I'm glad to do business with Haymon. Thank you, Al. So let the boy Ego cook. And the haters can't stand it. Canelo Alvarez, you have the biggest star from Mexico in the last, 15 years or so. Definitely the biggest star from Mexico, and top two biggest stars in boxing, him and Gervonta Davis. Those are the faces of boxing currently. Put the most butts in the seats, more merchandise, live gates, ticket sales, attraction, people paying attention. It's what it is. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, kid. I'm liking this new English Canelo, you know. Now, I don't have a problem, obviously, with him speaking his primary language and speaking Spanish, but I feel like English Canelo, the rest of the world is getting to see a bit more of Canelo, his true personality, and he's like coming out of his shell a little bit, and it's just fun. Like he's been entertaining. You know, people mad at, you know, some of his fight picks and stuff. I don't change anything. Still think Benavidez is the fight to make. I think you need to fight Benavidez, but you know, it is what it is. You either do or you don't. And I think the Benavidez fight is a no-brainer, really. Everybody knows the fight should happen, needs to happen. It's on Canelo to make that happen. But you can only deal with what's the actual case and like what's going on. So he picked Berlanga for whatever reason. I will give them both credit because for what it's worth, their engagements and back and forth has been pretty entertaining. The way Berlanga is stepping to Canelo and saying, I'm gonna knock you out, and you know, I'm gonna knock you out, Poppy, and all this stuff. he's at least doing that part. And some guys get in front of Canelo and it's like they're almost afraid, like they get scared or starstruck or something. So given that Berlanga ain't really fought nobody of a Canelo level especially, you know, it is refreshing that at least he's giving you the promotional side of it, right? Like, many people probably thought Gervonta Davis would beat Rolly at the time that fight was announced and made. But given the fact that he's bigger than Tank and Rolly's a puncher and has a lot of power, and he was talking a good game and, you know, sounding confident, fights like that can do well just given that, right? It actually, I liken this Berlanga fight to a fight like Tank Rolly. And if you actually pay attention and you knew your stuff like Boxing Ego know his stuff, you'll know that Gervonta Davis and Rolly had a great promotion. The fight was actually delayed because Rolly ran into some legal issues he had to hash out, but then they rescheduled it, and then they did the fight in New York, and it set a record for the Barclay attendance, you know, and it made a lot of money and, you know, did good numbers, did great numbers in terms of business and live gate and the amount of people that were tuned in to watch. So Canelo's Canelo. I think he can, if anybody can make a Berlanga fight bigger, it's gonna be Canelo. Canelo, like no one else could fight Canelo and produce the financial gain that Canelo will with that name Berlanga. I do believe that. So at least they're making it fun. That's my point. Now, what he said about PBC, listen, the haters can't stand it. The racist fans, you know, they oftentimes have an issue with black advisor Al Haymon. They're anti-PBC, you see it. And now you have Canelo doing this interview with Gillian Wallow, and he's telling you when, because I remember this well, Golden Boy used to work with Richard Schaefer and Al Haymon, and they were putting on good fights. This is back like HBO days, right? Putting on good fights together. Fights like Canelo versus Mayweather, Danny Garcia versus Lucas Matisse, that was on that card. And then they actually broke off and formed PBC, meaning like Al Haymon, and he took his business elsewhere. For whatever reason, De La Hoya, that wasn't included. So many of the fighters had an opportunity and a choice to either stick with Oscar De La Hoya or go with PBC. Majority of the fighters went with Al Haymon. Guys like Abner Mares, guys like Leo Santa Cruz, guys like Adrian Broner at the time, guys like Danny Garcia, Errol Spence, Deontay the Bronze Bomber Waddle from, oh my God, Tuscaloosa, Alabama to this day, right? These guys all left. Amir Khan, I believe, was working with him, right? So all of them left to PBC. But the big name that actually stayed with Golden Boy, Canelo Alvarez, he decided to stay with Oscar. And Canelo from Mexico, Oscar De La Hoya, Spanish speaking, English speaking. So they had the language in common, both languages. And it was probably a loyalty thing, to be honest. Canelo, you know, stick with the Mexican-American legend of the sport. In De La Hoya, you speak the same languages, English and Spanish. And at the time, Canelo was probably just staying loyal to a fault. Now, me, your boy Ego, I'm not Canelo. I'll move the same way because I don't stay loyal to anything that is not loyal to me, right? So, like, for example, if you are with a girl and your wife, she's your wife, you wifey the girl or whatever, and she's cheating on you, but then you stay loyal to a person who's disrespecting you and cheating you and, you know, creeping and stepping out the relationship. First of all, I wouldn't even be in that situation unless it was unknowing. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I don't let people disrespect me. So if you didn't know about it or something, then that's one thing. But if you knowingly know that she's actively cheating and that's not what you want from a relationship and you stay in it, then, you know, you're better than me. So I think Canelo was loyal to a fault. I think he tried to make it work with Golden Boy, but in the end, now Canelo and Oscar De La, I do believe Oscar De La Hoya, they seem and appear to detest each other. And De La Hoya's always taking shots at Canelo. Canelo's always taking shots at Oscar. And it's just real ugly and sour. Fast forward to the future, Canelo is working with PBC again. You know, previously he had done fights with PBC. I believe the Lotta fight might have been on Showtime. And, you know, he came back for a one-off and he did a fight with Caleb Plant to become undisputed. If you notice, when he works with PBC, they seem to be bigger events because he had several fights. I don't even know the amount, probably 8, 9, 10 fights with DAZN. Those fights were due. One was the other was Illmatic, right? Like, he look at all of his fights with DAZN and tell me which one was a banger. Which one? Because the Danny Jacobs fight, I thought that was underwhelming. Billy Joe Saunders was acting really weird and not showing up to face-offs and stuff like that. So it was really a weird promotion. Guy that had previously failed a drug test. Both of them actually had previously failed drug tests. And the fight itself, I didn't think it was like legendary. You know what I mean? The Caleb Plant Canelo fight, I did enjoy, right? Things like that. Munguia, that was a solid watch as well. So it's just a different level of magic. And now you have Canelo Alvarez, who's even saying that. And he's cool with Eddie Hearn, but he didn't mention Eddie Hearn in this stanza. He says, hey, I like to work with everybody. Right now I'm working with PBC and things are good. And Canelo has not said one bad thing about his interactions with Al Haymon. If anything, you have a fighter from Mexico who is dished on the praise of Al Haymon. Like, not just this interview, but other interviews, Canelo has said that Al Haymon is a joy and a pleasure to work with. They treat me well. And Al Haymon actually cares about the fighter. And I think that's one thing that's missing. He said he really likes that. And he notices a difference between maybe other guys and Al Haymon. Al Haymon seems to genuinely care about the fighters, which is something we've heard from the Bertos of the world, Floyd Mayweather, and pretty much anybody that has worked with Al Haymon. Like, the fighters, by and large, you don't really see many guys who are like, oh, Al Haymon treated me like crap and didn't care about me, like on a personal level. And I think that's connecting different than other people who kind of seem like more so the promoters of old. Dog eat dog world, sharks in a ocean type of mentality where they use the fighter for personal gain, you know, make it make sense. And then when the fighter starts losing, then they jump to the next toy, right? It's just like real expendable, if you will. Al Haymon doesn't really do that. You got guys like Chris Arreola, right? Chris Arreola got a fight with Andy Ruiz on pay-per-view. And I think that's kind of just from being down with Al Haymon and being loyal to the brand and trying his hardest in the fights. And I think that's what happens on PBC. If you stick to the program and you're not like quitting in fights or something weird, but you can have losses, then they'll find a way to, you know, make it work for you. Even guys like Andre Berto, even though people complained, Floyd Mayweather, after he beat Manny Pacquiao, one of the oldest signings, you know, one of the like kind of like initial group, you had like Vernon Forrester and some other guys, but Andre Berto was one of the first kind of like stars that were breaking out that were teamed up with Al Haymon. Floyd Mayweather, Berto stuff, and then they end up locking horns and fighting. So Berto being down, he got that big fight. He got that big opportunity. And they even put Berto versus Robert Guerrero 2 on a recent card. So it shows me everything that I need to know. You look at Top Rank, if you lose, then you might get dropped. I just read that Gabe Flores Jr., who took, like, I think it was 2 bad losses on Top Rank, I heard he just signed with BOK Prime. So, and he's been doing more independent shows out in Stockton, right? And that's kind of what it is on Top Rank or other promotions, where if you start losing, you become like almost an afterthought and they don't like really integrate you into the mix. Like you had Top Rank who was pushing Castillo Clayton saying he was the prospect killer. But then when he lose, I haven't heard from him since. You got that guy, the Nihao African dude, right? And then he loses to Navarrete, Dogbay, Isaac Dogbone or Dogbay or whatever. And then when he loses bad twice to Navarrete, you never really even hear from him anymore. He's just like out the way. So it is what it is. But good and refreshing to hear Canelo keeping it real on his experiences. And it's funny because the racist in boxing, they always got something bad to say about Al Haymon and say he's the cancer of boxing and this. But you have the biggest fighter and biggest Mexican fighter who doesn't like a Mexican American fighter that speaks the same languages as him, that he used to be in a partnership with. And then he tried to sue them. Well, he didn't try. He sued them to get out of his contract. And now it's been bad ever since. And they're taking shots at each other in the public. And that's Canelo and Oscar and Golden Boy. So it's just funny because the racists never bring that up. They never bring up that the biggest star in boxing, biggest Mexican star, is beefing actively with his former promoter, Mexican American. And then he's praising a black advisor in Al Haymon. And then for me to say this, the racists will probably get mad in the comment section. Oh, why are you making it about race? It's a fact. Nothing I said was off. Nothing I said was a lie. I let you listen to what Canelo said. He says, I think I would have done better with PBC. So he believes his career could be even bigger or further along if he would have stuck with PBC based on how they get down and handle business. So that's a big endorsement from Canelo Alvarez. Pay they? It is what it is. The other thing, it leads me to my next point. Canelo is surely bigger than Terrence Crawford as a brand in boxing and worldwide. He makes more money. He has a better resume. He's a bigger star. I don't think anyone can deny that, but it just goes to show you. Remember when I said bad business bud? How is it that the biggest stars in boxing, Canelo and Gervonta Davis, Al Haymon and PBC, they're good enough for the two biggest stars in boxing that are putting butts in seats and generating numbers. But you had Terrence Crawford became a free agent, went to BLK Prime, left, did one fight with Errol Spence, which got him the most respect and the most attention and the biggest paycheck, right? And made sense, his strongest pay-per-view numbers. And then he leaves to go work with Turkey, and then they overpay. They invest so much money into the event, get Eminem, and then it flops. And they say it lost over $10 million. So how is this not bad business bud? But then you have Canelo Alvarez, who is telling you, yo, I like working with Al Haymon and PBC. And my career probably would have been in a different light and further along had I stuck with PBC. So I really find that to be ironic and funny that PBC, you got the biggest stars with big brands, and they seem to be enjoying their tenure with Al Haymon and PBC. But then a guy like Crawford, he's going over like, oh, Turkey, and he's saying stuff like the Israel Madrimov fight feels bigger than the Errol Spence fight, which clearly is cap. And I think it'll be evident as soon as Boxing Ego gets his hands on that live gate for that Israel Madrimov fight in Crawford. I can't wait. I can't wait. So I just find it ironic. And this is part of the game of boxing. It's no longer just, oh, I'm a good fighter, I got a belt, I moved up multiple weight classes. You have to actually embrace the business side of things and make proper choices to really have that exponential growth. There's a lot of great fighters in combat sports. Like there's guys in the MMA who you get this guy and let's say he could beat Conor McGregor, but unless this guy builds up his brand and his worth and makes a case to get a Conor McGregor fight, likely that won't happen. He's not going to get that. You see what I'm saying? So this has always been the case with combat sports, where the business and the branding of it actually matters. And it's good that Canelo is setting the record straight, and he's telling you, like, hey, my career would probably be in a different spot if I teamed up with Al Haymon from jump, you know? And I think that's important. And I think it's important to note that a person like Crawford feels different. Like, I don't need PBC, apparently, based on his actions. And the last thing I'll say is, you have Crawford is working with Turkey, and he's actively removing options based on, I don't like what they said, or personal beefs. Like Canelo, I don't want to work with Canelo. I don't want to work with Tim Tszyu. How are you eliminating options for a guy like Crawford, who needs all of the options he can get? He needs all of the dance partners that make sense on the table, and you're taking off dance partners and chess pieces from the table. There's no one, people like, oh, you're the Bud hater and all that. I don't care about nothing. In one ear, out the other. You're not going to prove me wrong. And if you can prove me wrong, please try in the comment section. How does it make sense for a guy like Crawford, who's looking for the big fights, to be removing big fight options like Canelo and Tim Tszyu and throwing them out the window, saying he said something that offended me? And it's not even Crawford doing it, the fighter. It's not like Crawford is having such a bad blood or whatever, because the fighters probably respect the other fighters. You have an advisor, somebody who's supposed to be looking out in terms of trying to make the big fights, and they're ruling out fights for you. This is counterproductive, right? It's like having a dirty roommate. It doesn't work. If you have OCD and you're a neat freak and a clean freak and you like your stuff organized, and then you have a roommate that is just completely messy, disorganized, they aren't punctual, there's gonna be rifts and conflicts, because every time you clean the kitchen, they come up behind you and they're putting dirty bowls and spoons all in the sink, right? So that's not gonna work well, because you're trying to make the house smell good. They're not showering for days and they're making the house stink because they have body odor, BO, and they're not washing their ass. Counterproductive, right? It's common sense. You want your house to smell good, look nice, look clean, and they're doing things to actively cancel that. Cancel all the positive work. You wiping the counters, they're getting stains and, you know, Kool-Aid juice and a cup of noodles. They're spilling them on the counter and then not wiping up after themselves. Or you leave for a day or two and then they won't take out the trash, so the house stinks. It's counterproductive. No different than Turkey ruling out Canelo and Tim Tszyu, which could be options for Crawford, but he's saying, I don't want to work with them for my own personal reasons because we're having a spat. You got to